I thought my boyfriend was the sweetest man, till I realized how he made his money. Let me just tell you, it's disgusting. Stick around to the end and let me know, what would you do about this sticky situation? What can you do to regain the little trust your family once had in you? I seek answers because I'm at a place in my life where I badly need right counsel so I could continually take the right steps. I came from a family of 4. It has always been my father, Tony, my mother, Tara, my brother, John, and myself. One little family that had things to be fixed. My parents were not rich. My dad was a plumber who spent most of his time idling away with his friends who were just no good. When he was not with them, he was either at a client's place overcharging for his service, which was really good, or he was at home giving excuses to my mom of why he failed to live up to his responsibility of providing for the family. It was always one episode or the other with my dad. He always had someone to blame for his failures. Well, my mother, on the other hand, was the consolation my brother and I had. She carried the whole family on her back. I looked into our family and you would find a woman playing both her role and that which her husband was supposed to play. She was taking on 2 jobs to ensure that there was always food on the table, and she did not neglect her duties to us as a mother or to be my dad's wife. It was my mother who had made the mistake of getting married to my father. I would often look at the pictures of their wedding day which hung on our wall in the parlor and weep because my mother was nothing close to the woman in the pictures. She was not even close to the shadow of her. She had grown from the beautiful, plump, blonde lady my father got married to into a skinny woman. Due to the fact that she handled 2 different jobs, she was most times away from home, and my father would use the opportunity to bring the women into the house. My mom was very much aware of the fact that her husband was a cheat, but she did not separate from him because she did not want her children to grow without a father. We were the reason she stayed with him, as she felt she was doing her children a good thing, but that was her mistake. My elder brother, John, who was 2 years ahead of me, soon began following the footsteps of my dad, who did not bother rebuking him. My mother tried talking to him on several occasions so he could retrace his steps before he got too deep into the wayward life, but my brother, who was developing a strong physical stature, remained adamant, so there was nothing else Mom could do. She could only hope her only son turns over a new leaf, and that her only daughter would not be deceived by men just as she was deceived by the father. And that was the problem. I was very naive and had little willpower. There was a lot I did not know, and this gave my mother serious concern because men would always prey on beautiful girls like me, and judging from my personality, I could not say no to pressure. As a result of this, my vulnerability, my mother had to employ methods she thought would help prevent people from taking advantage of me, even though she had little time on her hands. She had me keep just a few female friends, and my friendship with them was permitted by my mother after she thoroughly scrutinized them. They had to be friends who were not interested in boys, because my mom knew that if I hung around with friends who had boyfriends, I would soon be pressured into having one myself. And even though I never made an objection towards my mom's ways in keeping me safe, my curiosity still wanted to know what it felt like just to have a boyfriend. I remember asking my mom why it was wrong for me to keep male friends just as every other girl. Besides, my friends did and began telling me of how dangerous and deceptive men were. I guess she spoke from a place of pain, as my father, who pledged undying love and commitment to her when she was young, only did so to have her let her guard down and sleep with him, an act that resulted in her being pregnant with my elder brother. The shame made her run away from her parents, who did not want anything to do with her, and she moved in with my father, whom she got married to while being 3 months pregnant. The image which my mom painted about men was quite scary, and so even my curiosity wanted me to mingle with them. I tried as much as I could to stay far away from them, and that was the very reason why I did not cry or make a fuss during my high school prom night, when my mom decided that I was not going to go with the guy as a date. Mom did all in her power to keep me from being exploited by boys, but she could only do so much. I was finally done with the high school, and I got admission to go study law in Queens College. My brother John, who was 2 classes ahead of me, was already in the same institution studying psychology, or so he claimed, and the financial responsibility was laid on my mom. My admission into Queens meant that Mom would have another load placed on her shoulders, and although she never did admit it in my presence, I knew that she was being drained emotionally and financially by my father, my brother, and my admission. I thought of ways that I could help lighten the burden she was bearing, but it only meant that I would have to work so I could generate some finance to support her. But that was not an option for 2 valid reasons. My mom would not want me to work as a student in her first year, as I needed to focus on my studies. And she would not want me to be exposed to labor market at a very young age because men would easily take advantage of me. There was nothing I could do to help. The only way I thought to repay her was to avoid treading the same path as my elder brother and father. I've never seen my mom visibly distraught till my first day in college. She'd gone with me to my brother's house, which was off the school campus. My brother lived alone in the house my mother had rented for him, so she saw it was a relief to her because she would not need to pay for 2 houses. I would just live with my brother in his house. My mom and I got to my brother's house, but when we knocked, a boy that my brother's age who was just putting on his underwear with a cigarette in his mouth opened the door. My mother was confused. She expected to see her son in the house she was paying for and not someone else. The boy had barely asked what we wanted when my brother came from behind and asked him to let us in. My mom's confused expression became an angry one as we both watched my brother and his friend clean up the house that was littered with bottles of beer and packets of cigarettes. My mom began thinking long and hard on what to do. Another reason she was initially glad that I would be staying at my brother's place was so that my brother would act as a guide to me by warding off boys who would want me to have fun, but it was clear he could not take care or watch over me, as he couldn't even take care of himself. If my mom had her ways, and if I'd proven to her that I wasn't so naive, she would have made plans to get me an apartment of my own, even if it meant taking up 1,000,000 jobs. But because the reverse was the case, I had to stay with my brother. I soon learned that his friends who had opened the door for my mom and that day was Clyde. He was 3 years older than my brother, but they coincidentally shared the same birthday. No wonder they acted alike. Clyde was a little more handsome and taller than my brother. His parents were by no means rich, but they had just enough to send him to school to get his master's degree in electrical engineering. The more he came around the house, the more I got intrigued by his personality, though I didn't let it show. Besides the fact he would drink beer and smoke cigarettes, he seemed like a nice guy. Or at least he acted so. I don't recall ever seeing him bring a lady to our house, so I believed he wasn't a womanizer like my brother was. I did my best to always ignore him whenever he was around, as I wanted making my mother proud, but I let my guard down with him. We began talking, and he began to visit more often. Whenever my brother wanted getting intimate with his partner over who usually came visiting over the weekends, he would ask me to go over to Clyde's house and pass the weekend because he needed privacy. It was in Clyde's house that I lost my virginity, after much pressure from him. I initially felt really bad and guilty about it. How would my mom react when she found out? That's what I thought to myself. Although I made resolve to never have sex with Clyde or anyone else anymore, I could not deny the fact that I enjoyed the experience and I soon found myself craving it. I moved in with Clyde, who was now my boyfriend, as I felt I was in love with him. He was nothing like my mom had described men to be. He was sweet, took good care of me. Everything about me, from dressing down to the way I carried myself, soon began to change, as Clyde would often give me money, as much as $500. I initially got scared and curious as to how a student could have such amounts of money, but he dismissed my fears by claiming that he worked online. His words seemed true to me because, well, aside from the times he spent with me, he was always on his laptop and I'm just being a naive girl. I did not bother asking what it was. My mom was always calling to check up on me. She would never hang up the phone except when she was done reminding me to avoid boys. She never knew I moved in with one. Whenever I went home, I appeared to be that little naive girl who did not know her left from her right. But when I returned back to school, I became the girl who's being exposed to many things. Everything was moving fine till I got a call from home that my mother's been rushed to the hospital. She's had a heart attack but was in stable condition. I rushed down to the hospital in tears. My mother was more dear to me than anyone else. She was the only reason I wanted making it in life. She had made lots of sacrifices for me, so she could not just die till I'd shown her gratitude. I can see the expression of pain and disgust in my mother's face when I entered her ward. Rather than lighten up as she usually did whenever she saw me, my mother began to cry. It was clear that my presence had made her start crying, and I did not know why. My father, who had ignored my greeting, asked that I leave the ward as my mother needed to rest. The next time I saw my mother was when she was discharged from the hospital. My father brought her home, and she would not talk to me, and even the mere sight of me would just cause her heart palpitations, and I didn't know why. My father did not help matters either, as he was too much avoiding me like a plague. It was on the third day when my brother came back home. He played a video from his phone, which his girlfriend sent him. I almost died. It was a short clip of Clyde and I having sex. The video was downloaded from the internet. Unknown to me was the fact the whole time I was at Clyde's house, he live-streamed our day-to-day activity for the world to see. That's how he made the money which he lavished me with. To make matters worse, I was not the only girl he used that way. I was his way to make each girl feel special, so they could be submissive to him. Me being so naive had ruined me, and that was just what my mother was trying so hard to avoid. The next few days were filled with misery. I could not go out as the video was now making its rounds viral. My father, though disappointed, could not confront me as he had never been a good example of morality to me. My brother and a few of his other friends had failed in tracking down Clyde, who was on the run for fear of his life. And my mom was just living like every other person in the house did not exist. It took her a while to accept my apology, and even when she did, I knew the pain was too deep. I would spend the rest of my life trying to regain her trust. It seemed as though my carelessness brought some sense into my father, as he had us gathered together one night and began apologizing. He'd failed at being a father and a husband. He took the blame of everything going wrong in our family. Before long, we were all crying. We just needed to heal, and we spent the rest of our lives doing so, but we needed to get justice done. The matter was reported to the police, and a hunt for Clyde was in place. It took a while, but he was finally caught. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Clyde had amassed a fortune. About $10 million. Everyone was shocked, including Clyde's parents. He was charged and sent to court, and the ruling was going to be in our favor. If found guilty, he faced up to 12 years in prison. I felt hurt and pity at the same time. Clyde had hurt me and my family, and it would take a lifetime to recover from that injury. But I felt pity knowing that a part of his life was going to be wasted behind bars. My family got angry with me again when I suggested we drop the charges against Clyde and just move on with our life. But they knew that it was my decision to make at the end of the day. We called his parents to inform them of my decision to drop all charges against their son. But to our surprise, they vehemently opposed it. They told us to let their son pay for the crimes he's done, and as a matter of fact, they already disowned him. The judge ruled in my favor. I was awarded his house, which was valued at $1.2 million, and his 2 cars. Clyde was sentenced to 5 years in prison with hard labor. Well, it's been 6 years now, and my family and I moved to a different city, just to start our life fresh. I sold the house and the fancy cars, which the court awarded to me. I wanted nothing to remind me of my past. It was part of the healing process. My brother John enrolled for therapy, and I think it's helping him. He'd stopped taking hard drugs for 3 years now. Both parents were on vacation somewhere in Dubai while I worked as a lawyer for a reputable law firm in the city. My past seemed to have somehow caught up with me when I got into Burger King, though, on Wednesday to get lunch. I saw him. I suddenly saw Clyde. He was a dishwasher. Things were not going well with him. I immediately took my purse and left without him noticing. That was my last time at Burger King. I wasn't going back to my past. The naive girl has now gotten some sense. I think the only good thing that comes out of this story is that this creep was caught and prosecuted, and all his wealth went to OP. I know it's not the best outcome for her because we don't know how long he was convicted for, but at least it was somewhat of a win. Guys, let me know how you would have handled this creep if you were in OP's position. Drop your comments down below, and we're going to look at the second story of the day. Reconsidering my engagement after my fiancé did not stick up for her sister at our engagement party. For the sake of this, I'm going to call my fiancé Claire. We go back to high school, but only started dating in 2019. Claire's extended family did not meet for Thanksgiving or Christmas the past 2 years, and this holiday is supposed to be the first since pre-COVID. There was also a family reunion that was canceled due to COVID. So Claire's parents wanted to invite a lot of people to our engagement party because it was the first meeting in so long. However, the event is making me reconsider for a few reasons. Claire did not want a specific aunt, Janice, to come to the party because she's a handful to deal with. But because they hadn't seen her in almost 2 years, her parents said they were inviting her anyways. Janice has a history of arguing elections, along with voicing disagreements on Facebook that led to ugly back and forths. She was also outspoken about family who were vaccinated, and posted about her disappointment too. She disagrees for religious reasons, and don't get me started on how she thinks the election was stolen. She's the cause of so much nonsense, but Claire's parents did not want to exclude her to avoid drama. I offered to talk to her parents myself, but Claire asked me not to. The reason I'm writing this is because of something that happened at the party. Claire's sister, Hannah, performed a dance that her parents asked her to. But Janice told her parents that it, quote, wasn't appropriate for a lot of reasons that made me disgusted. It's because Hannah's 14. Hannah performed a contemporary dance to a song her parents wanted, and she wore a dress. Janice said that some of the moves were inappropriate when no one else thought so. Her dance also received a great reception, but Janice took to Facebook to bash Claire's parents, along with posting a picture of the performance that Claire's parents posted. She said they were, quote, failures at parenting for allowing it, and that it wasn't, quote, supposed to be a strip club. This is the kind of person Janice is, and some other relatives called her out for it. But Claire's parents said nothing and told Claire to let it pass because they, quote, don't engage in her drama. But I disagree. She called her a stripper and used their photos. I asked Claire for Janice's number. I'm going to talk to her myself. But she refused to give it to me because, quote, others replied already. But that's not an excuse for Hannah's family to not stick up for her. But Claire wants to let it pass. I vented to one of my friends who said Claire might not stick up for her children if we have them. And he also said she, quote, should not need her parents' approval for everything. After I vented, I tried to talk again about why I felt it was important to stand up for Hannah. But she kept echoing her parents and staying out of it. And that's why I'm reconsidering. I just wanted to get another opinion of how to talk to her again, because I tried twice and it went nowhere. Okay guys, there's a comment that OP replied to that I want to read, so let's check it out. I'll never understand family members who sweep things under the rug to keep the peace. All they're doing is enabling crappy behavior and letting those people get away with it. That's when OP replied saying this. Janice downloaded and reposted a picture of Hannah's performance, calling it indecent photography. And that made me upset when her parents said to let it pass and later invite her to the wedding because it'd be a mess if they didn't. Guys, what do you think should have happened to Janice? Drop your comments and thoughts down below. Don't forget to press that subscribe button. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next one.